This is a really fun printmaking technique too. It involves a piece of styrofoam, and it doesn't matter which side of the styrofoam you use. I recommend drawing it with first in your sketchbook, but then you're going to draw with a Sharpie first, and you're going to press lightly. Don't worry if you make a mistake as you draw, because the Sharpie is never going to show up. It's just telling you where you should put your lines for later. So I'm just going to do a very simple design. Super simple for me. So I did it in Sharpie. Then you're going to take either a dull pencil or a pointy stick, and you're going to trace over top of those lines. Now it's really important when you're tracing that you do stick to your lines, because this will show up in your final print. So I'm pressing hard, but I'm not pressing so hard that I am making a hole in my styrofoam. And I'm using my black lines as guides. So if there's a black line I don't like, you don't have to trace it. These lines that I'm drawing right now are etching lines. They will show up white if you do it correctly. The other thing to note is if you do anything with letters or words or numbers, they will print backwards. So you want to print them backwards on here so they show up correctly later. Now the first method I'm going to show you is with washable markers. So you want to get washable markers, not permanent markers for this part, and you're going to color it in. Now be careful because it will smear. So don't rub your hand on top of it, or the side of your hand is going to turn blue in this case. It might also be speckled. And that is okay if it gets a little bit dotted looking. So I'm going to color it in. That speckled part right here, it might be a fingerprint left over from my hand. Some of the oils. That big speckled part. So this is technique number one. I'm going to color it in. If I leave something white, it will stay white if I do it on white paper. If you do it on a color paper, anything that I do not color in with markers will show up as whatever color paper I have. And remember, oops, see, look, I already smeared a little bit. I think I had paint down from a different demonstration. Now this is technically a mono print because I have to apply the color each time. But in a way, it's kind of an etching because my lines will always be there that I put. So part is kind of a cross between an etching and a mono print, because you can certainly change the colors every single time. So I am going quickly to color this in so I can show you the next step. Okay, so after I do that, my next step is to move it out of the way. I do not want it near my next part. I'm going to take my piece of paper and I'm going to write my name on here. So your name usually goes on the side. Your title, some put it in quotes, some put it italic. And then for now, I'm going to say I'm going to make 5 copies. So I'm going to write a 5. So this is my first copy, so it's a 1 out of 5. And then my next time I do this, I'll put a 2 out of 5, and then a 3 out of 5, a 4 out of 5, and a 5 out of 5. These are called additions. So this tracks which one I made. Then I'm going to take my piece of paper and I'm going to take a spritz bottle and I'm going to wet it. I don't want it to be soaking wet, but I want it to be evenly wet. So then I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm just going to make sure that there's no puddles, because you do not want any puddles. Be careful of your fingertips because once they get wet, it might smear the paint. Then I'm going to take my print, make sure it's facing the right direction, so I want to make sure my grass is facing down. I'm going to lay it on here carefully. I think I wrote my title too high for the size of my paper. You can use your hand, you can use a baron, or you can use a printing press, and you're going to rub it. And you want to rub it for about 10 seconds to make sure it's even. If you're using your hand, if you're using a baron, you could do it a little bit less. If you're doing a printing press, it's even less than that. And then what happens is I'm going to pick it up carefully, and I just got a print of my printing plate. So how cool is that? You see the white lines where I etched. If you notice that it's a little bit blurry in any spots, that's probably because there was too much water there. So then what I can do after this is I can take my printing plate that I already have and I can color right over it again with marker. And I can make copy number 2, copy number 3, copy number 4. Or I can take a brayer and use printmaking ink or acrylic paint. You could try tempera if you want, but it might be too thin. And I'm going to roll it onto a piece of plastic with my brayer so that my whole brayer gets covered. You want to make sure you get it all the way across so it's nice and even and not too thick, because too thick is not good. So if you see I have little spikes on here, it might be hard to tell in the camera. That means it's probably too thick right now, so I'm just going to roll it a little thinner. And then I'm going to roll it onto here. You want to have a placemat underneath, because if you get it on your paper, you don't want it to end up on your good copy. So this is option number 2. So you could use marker or you can use ink. I'm going to put just a placemat underneath of it for this next part because I don't want my spot to get too messy. I'm going to take my piece of paper. Make sure you have it all filled out with your first name, title, and edition number. I'm going to lay this on it again, or this time I can lay it this way, where I lay my paper on top of it. It's just a little bit hard because then you can't see if it's centered or not. So both options work. I think I just moved my paper. Eek. I'm going to roll it on here with my Baron or my press or my hand. And I'm going to pull it up and I have another print. How neat is that? So you could do marker or you could do printmaking ink. And you can make multiple copies of this same thing. This will not be considered a mono print because I just do a solid color and it will always be consistent. If I do the marker, it's more of a mono print style. So that is another printmaking technique.